the idea was that when students are faced with a problem in life, it's not going to be a math problem or a science problem, it's going to be some problem thrown at them.
Yeah.
And then if you have to deal with that problem, you need problem solving skills. So we started interviewing these school principals who were running affordable private schools. Actually, the school principal is a very high leverage point because one, they can directly have an impact of 30% on a student outcome because they invest in better teacher capacity building, they invest in better school culture, better processes. When it comes to Edu-preneurship, we look at skills like where are they investing their funds. Impact measurement is very hard, but it's so important because you can't keep just relying on stories.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of BADLAAV Unplugged, conversations that inspire. This is being brought to you by Connecting Dreams Foundation and the Global Changemakers Collective. This is the podcast where we bring to you conversations of social entrepreneurs and change makers who are leading real impact and real change on ground in communities around them. With us today, we have Saumya Aggarwal. Saumya is the founder and CEO of the Unifly Collective, which is a non-profit organization that works to create educational spaces and schools where children thrive in areas of academics, co-curricular, and what they call edu-preneurship. Another interesting fact about Saumya before we move on is that Saumya is also one of our founding change makers under the Global Changemakers Lab Program, where we work with young change makers across colleges in Delhi and other states. Saumya was the founder and the president of the Connecting Dreams Foundation chapter at College of Business Studies, which is why the conversation with her today is going to be all the more exciting. We're going to dive deep into her roots and her beginnings as a social change maker and how CDF shaped her journey. Welcome, Saumya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Saumya. So lovely to have you here with us today. I'd like to hear about what your journey in social impact, for starters, looked like when you joined CDF as a young change maker. How did it all begin?
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I think my journey in the social space truly began with Connecting Dreams Foundation because at that point in time, a friend of mine just recommended that, hey, I had gone to this program and it was really interesting. Do you also want to join?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure. What is it about? And it just started with that very little conversation, which then bloomed into us going to different villages in Uttar Pradesh, immersing ourselves. I think at that point in time, I wouldn't say how much I contributed, but rather how much the experience contributed back to me. Because it was my first time. I've grown up in Delhi, just truly a city girl. And it was my first time actually stepping into a village, understanding how different the problems are and how grave the problems are. And that first volunteering experience led to more volunteering experiences later where I actually started going to different classrooms and hosting craft sessions for students. So I think CDF was just that cornerstone for me to understand that this space exists. I also remember once in one of the visits that we did with the foundation, we had gone where this person, he's been in the social impact space at that point in time for about 15-20 years. And he was just telling us how when we look at empowerment, we look at it from these very theoretical perspectives. But when you actually come down to it, empowerment can look like, from this to this. And I still remember that. And what he essentially meant was, if we can empower one woman to go from, can you give me money, to saying, today I am the one who is the breadwinner of the family and this is what my contribution to the family income is. it's not just money, it changes a whole lot of power dynamics,
Yes.
societal dynamics. I think a lot of the fact that I remember this like 10 years later shows how much of an impact these kind of experiences can hold for you. Eventually, when I went to pursue my post graduation, that's when I thought, okay, I want to be in the education space and let me do that for both high-end private schools and affordable private schools, government schools, etc. So from being a part of Connecting Dreams Foundation, founding the college chapter there, it then led on to me starting a project of my own in a domain that I liked. So that was really the root of the Unifly Collective as well.
Yes, so I'm actually interested in learning why the domain of education to begin with, because you said that in a domain that I like, and it was the education sector that you wanted to work on, and it was also the project that you had taken up when you were a part of CDF.
Yeah.
So why had you picked this sector in particular?
I think majorly the reason was my own experience of being a student. I went to what you would call a very good school in India. It was a good private school, and I used to perform really well academically, what I say a teacher's dream. But I was not happy in school because I also like dancing, I like painting, and those opportunities existed in our school, but only for a few students. The teachers' favorites and those kind of spaces. And that left me feeling very boxed into a single identity. So I don't look very fondly on my experiences back in school because it felt very one dimensional. And that's not how I believe schools should be. If I'm spending 18 years of my life in one institution, then why can't it be a space where I get to experiment, maybe even fail, but just truly discover who you are and bloom into somebody new, which can't happen if a label is just thrusted upon me very early on. So it just came from that. And I remember even in my CDF application, I had written, I want to work on education space.
Yeah.
Because why can't, why is it that Kerala only has a high literacy rate? Why can't we have a higher literacy rate across the country? And I truly feel that one, you're spending too much time in that one institution, and secondly, it is one of your foundational experiences. So what we do in life is ultimately guided by those first few years, and if we don't get the right start, how are we supposed to have a good future?
Okay, now that we've talked about your interest and also a challenge that you yourself had identified as a student, where you felt that your school experience in a sense was not as holistic as you'd have liked it to be, and also not, even if it were for someone who say is already good at public speaking, so they'd get those opportunities to be engaged in different extracurricular activities, but that's not the universal experience for every student. And driving from that, we'd like you to talk about the Unifly Collective and how that idea is something you've incorporated in the programs that you've created.
Because it started with the idea of how can you create holistic learning experiences for students, what I started doing was just going into classrooms with a thematic approach, where the idea was that when students are faced with a problem in life, it's not going to be a math problem or a science problem, it's going to be some problem thrown at them.
Yeah.
And then if you have to deal with that problem, you need problem solving skills. So what we essentially started doing was taking different concepts like climate change, artificial intelligence, and bringing them to students. And then they would dissect, okay, what is the economics aspect of it? How much is a farmer earning? Who is a farmer? Why is it that women don't come to your mind when you're thinking of a farmer? So you would just take a topic and look at it from multiple perspectives. And embedded within those were different activities giving opportunities to students. For example, can you depict this in the form of a play? Can we make a musical beat out of it? Things like that. And students were really enjoying, and we were also seeing them improve on their retention because they were understanding concepts. So they weren't memorizing for the sake of memorizing, but they were truly immersing themselves into these kind of topics that they were interested in. But the challenge was that it was a very self-serving way of us going into schools, because we were doing these workshops, but the child was going back to the same classroom where the same kind of teaching was happening. So nothing materially in the school was changing.
Yeah.
So then we asked ourselves the question, how do we make a change which would make a difference to the whole school? And from the student, we went to the teacher. And we said, okay, now whatever we've developed as ways of teaching, can the teacher deliver it? We started doing teacher training workshops. And through some of those, we also were interviewing teachers. We were sitting with them and chatting with them. And teachers used to tell us that, once we had the energy that you are bringing today, but it's the system that has made us this way. And we were like, okay, what do you mean? They said there are curriculum expectations. The parents expect us to teach in a certain way. The principal expects us to complete the syllabus at a certain time. So it doesn't leave room for us to actually experiment with the way that we are teaching.
Yes.
And so that's where we started thinking about who has more autonomy in a school system, and that was the school principal. But before intervening in the schools, we actually first went to the principals because we wanted to understand whether they would be interested. Are they facing any challenges? We might assume they're facing challenges, and that's why the school is not up to the mark. And that's when COVID hit. So we started interviewing these school principals who were running affordable private schools. And they were faced with so many challenges because students had gone back to the villages. They did not have fee collected, so they couldn't pay the teachers. The teachers didn't have digital literacy skills, so you couldn't actually take the school online. And we started then understanding what is it that the principal might need. But on one hand, we were seeing a school which was not able to even take their school online in 6 months of the pandemic, versus a school who'd been working with us for about 3 years, and they were able to take their school online in 20 days. And we said there has to be something going on because they're from the same context, from the same community.
Huge disparity.
Yes. And that's when we realized that the challenges that a principal was facing were very much like the entrepreneurial challenges we had faced. How do I build a team? How do I build my program? How do I do this at a low cost but at a high quality? And we said, okay, maybe principals don't need to just be administrators. Principals don't just need to be academic heads. They also need to be entrepreneurs because they need to create opportunities for the students, even though they are in a very resource constrained environment. And that's where Rahen as a program was born, where we essentially said we are going to empower school principals. And we also started looking at different research in terms of what capacity building for principals could look like. And there we discovered that actually the school principal is a very high leverage point because one, they can directly have an impact of 30% on a student outcome because they invest in better teacher capacity building, they invest in better school culture, better processes. So overall the school efficiency improves and quality improves as a result of a principal improving their practices. And in terms of a quantum of learning, they can add as much as 3 months worth of learning within the same academic year, which is the difference between an efficient and an inefficient school principal. And that's how we just started going to principals with a leadership program. And we designed it in a way that helps them actually improve the school. It's not something that you come, you attend a workshop, you go back home and you forget about it. But it's just done in a way that is very project centered. And we take the principal through a journey of attend a workshop, then you have a coach who will help you customize the learnings, and then you implement the project. So every quarter you just do a bite-sized work of improving your school, and over a period of 2 years you've significantly improved the school.
Okay, so when you say that you run this program, help me and the audience understand it better. What is the program structure like? So we were talking earlier about how this is a 2-year-long program. Is this then a cohort of principals that you teach? How big is the cohort in that case? What is the coach to, school ratio like? Take us through the program a little bit.
The program is a 2-year cohort-based program where we take in 20 school principals and they get to attend workshops, coaching which is bi-monthly. So once it's offline and once it's online. And quarterly they go to a new school, so which we call an exposure visit, because one thing that we realized is that for us or for a school principal to reimagine education, they need to get new ideas. So essentially we take them to different schools and they pick up different practices from there and then get them back to their schools. it's a one-on-one ratio for coaching for school principals, because the workshops are a group space.
Yeah.
And like you would have in a classroom of students, not everybody learns the same way. And not everybody is at the same level. So when we were designing the program, we said we need to bring in some sort of differentiation where the different levels of school principal can be catered to. So the workshop becomes a group space, but the coaching becomes an individual space. Because even if you look at something like student leadership, a school principal might want to build student leadership through clubs versus another school principal who might want to build it through, let's say, a student council. Or another one who might say, I don't want these formal structures, but I'm going to weave it into the fabric of my school culture. So assemblies are going to be led by students, for example. So the same topic is understood so differently, and there are so many ways of achieving the same goal, that ultimately I want my students to have leadership skills. So that's where the coach comes in, who will help them, one, make realistic plans, not go to the moon in one day that you have this inspiration, but make a realistic plan, implement it, and also push them to think a little bit further. After that, after they go through all these workshops, the coaching, the in-city exposure visits, on a yearly basis, we take them out of the city, which is a leadership retreat that they go through, where again they get to hear from experts, and these experts need not be adults. These experts can be students who run something in their school. It could be an NGO leader, it could be, it's not typically, we typically think of experts as a very narrow definition of maybe a professor.
Yes.
But in our
and a very
opinion,
top-down understanding of how expertise works.
Yes.
But yeah.
So we look at experts a little differently. It could be a practitioner who's done something right in their school or in the education space, and then we invite them to speak with the principals and help them refine their ideas further. And then they also go through go to different schools based on what they want to improve in their school. So we give principals an element of choice, which is something that we've realized works very well for programs with adults. Because when I'm being given something and my interest might lose out, but if I'm choosing that I want to work on the community in my school versus you are choosing that I want to work on teacher development, you are already making a commitment. Versus somebody else coming and telling you, hey, you need to work on the community, it's really bad, you've not built parent relations. So we've built in that element of choice in the program itself. So school leaders take out 3 to 4 days from their schedule and they go outside of their city to learn. And it does two things. One is they build a sense of community, because one of the things that we wanted to build into the program was leadership is, in any context, is always a lonely job. Within a school context, it manifests as something like teachers have other teachers to talk to rant to. But who will a principal go to? That, this is the problem that I'm facing. I don't know how to manage my teachers. They don't have anybody to go to. They don't have a coach. So we wanted to build that community for the principals where they could rely on each other for the problems they are facing, get ideas. So it forms the community when they're at that exposure visit. And what it does in the school is, now that the principal is not there in the school for 3 to 4 days, somebody else has to take the lead. So you're actually building a skill of the second line of leadership, which is what we do in the first quarter of the program, that you assign somebody to be a vice principal or an academic head and you train them. So that person, when this principal has gone for the exposure visit, takes the reins of the school. And what we've been able to see is that really makes a difference in these small schools where there are 10 teachers, one principal, about 300 students.
Well, this is a very thoroughly designed and well thought through program, and it must have taken you a lot of iterations to come to this stage where you have every element well thought through, where you know that if the principal is out at the retreat, then this is also serving a beneficial purpose for the rest of the school, developing and honing a second line of leadership, and overall creating edu-preneurship, which is what you talk about when you say that we want to create ACE schools in the country. Right? And I think something that I'm very interested and our audience would be interested to know about is the kind of impact that your program has been able to generate so far. So what has that been like?
what I believe a program design document is a living document. So it's never really done. Every single year before the program starts, 3 months before that, we sit together as a team and we look at what worked, what elements we need to improve on, how can we make the journey more user-centered. Because in the impact space, generally we think about impact first, but actually that impact will be brought if you think about the user first.
Yes.
So yeah, really means a lot when you say the program sounds very thought through. In terms of the impact, what we measure is one, how the school principal has improved. So far we've run four different cohorts of the program. And what we've been able to see is that the school principal are improving on skills such as being a visionary, their ability to delegate better, being a strategic communicator. And all of these skills, they directly or indirectly impact the students. Some of the things like them being able to improve the teaching and learning will obviously impact the student better, versus things like becoming an effective communicator indirectly impact the student because they're communicating better with the community. So they're involving parents more. They're able to really have decentralized leadership, so they're involving their teachers more. And we've seen anywhere between a 20 to 45% growth in different skills among different principals. And like you said, we are envisioning building ACE schools. And ACE schools for us are schools that excel in academics, schools that excel in co-curriculars, and which are led with the spirit of entrepreneurship. What we've seen is that as a result of the school principal skills growing, the schools are starting to ACE. So what we noticed is that there was an improvement of more than 60% in students' ability to understand the concept in these schools. Second, we saw that in terms of co-curricular, all of our school principals are investing more in co-curricular. And when it comes to edu-preneurship, we look at skills like where are they investing their funds. So for our first cohort that graduated 2 years back, the school principals actually, they went back to their management and they said, I want to invest in using the building as a learning gate. So we want to make protractors on the ground and we want to put in stickers using which children can learn. We want to put up the community that they come from. So they all selected the topics and they wanted to actually visually not just improve the building but use it in the form of teaching and learning. So there would be a wall where there are planets in the corridor and there would be a class happening there. So it's not just something that's there for beautification purposes. And they got their management to actually release funds for something like this. So how are we investing more funds back into improving the school, the teaching and learning, things like that. The second part of edupreneurship that we've seen a lot in our principals is their ability to attract more resources to the school. So they've been able to attract volunteers, better NGOs, who then bring in more opportunities. So earlier, one of our schools, they did not have a sports program. When we did the student voice quarter with them, where essentially we try to understand how can students contribute to the betterment of school? Are we hearing what the students want? How do students give feedback? So when the principal implemented some of those elements of feedback, what they realized is that the students want sports. The students were continuously coming back and saying we don't have sports, etc. So then the school principal actually found out somebody who could come in for martial arts, who could come in for yoga, so that even if there isn't too much space in the school, you're still providing the sports that you can within a limited space. So these are some of the factors that we consider which help us believe that the program is making impact. And we also collect a whole lot of qualitative stories. So beyond what we want to measure, we've seen a whole lot of changes. For example, one of the principals, I remember when she joined the program, she used to not speak. And that was our smallest cohort. It was a 5 principal cohort because we were just starting out this program. And so she couldn't speak in a cohort of 5 principals. And today she's done TED Talks, TED style talks, I would say. She's been on podcasts. She was also in a newspaper featured by Dettol. But more importantly, she started her school with her husband. So what she tells us is that earlier, before she joined the program, all the partnership conversations were something that her husband
did,
like very, very typical, that
Yes.
all the outdoorsy things the husband was sort of taking care of, and she was not even confident in leading those. And she said today when somebody enters the school, every single staff member redirects them to me. Right? So I am feeling more confident,
Yes.
and my teachers are experiencing that confidence more. And it's not just that individual change, she's actually taken that change into her community, where she identified a problem where mothers were not able to pay for the school fee. And she said that student attendance had also been dropping. So she actually opened up a rasoi, she calls it Apna Rasoi, which is a community kitchen where she employs women. So they get some income, and then that fresh food goes back into the school. So the children are also more interested in coming into the school itself. Now she's also used that same community center to provide lunch boxes to the construction laborers. So, like she's not just using her confidence and problem solving skill within the school ambit, but rather actually expanding it to the community. So her concept of a school is, I want to build a school as a community center.
I think it must be really heartening to see that something that you've implemented is having this kind of an impact, and a lot of it impact that you had not perhaps directly intended or imagined when you were designing the program, wherein a principal is taken on the role of a community leader. And I think the fact that you mentioned that this is a lady who's a principal, so this is a conversation which also intersects. This is not just about school leadership, but also about creating women leaders, and how multiple researchers have shown how that is also good for the community as a whole, because they think about what is to be done to improve the health of the women living there, to improve water availability, children's education. I think it's literally, it's very heartwarming. And yes, but the question about how to measure impact and how to evaluate whether or not your program is actually having the intended impact is something that I also wanted to ask, keeping in mind the young entrepreneurs that we work with as a part of Global Changemakers Lab. And this is going to be a twofold question from my end. So we work with a lot of youths who are interested in making social impact, and a lot of them take on projects which are centered on education and making education more accessible and improving the quality of education. But the point is, they are unaware of how to set achievable goals for themselves. So also how to measure the impact of any initiative that they are introducing on ground. And secondly, I think there is also a trouble that they face when it comes to envisioning how to zoom out and think about the problem that they're approaching at a systems level, and then identify the highest leverage initiative or intervention that they can introduce, which is feasible at their level, but at the same time is also going to have some impact. Because of this confusion that exists, what we see when we talk about education-centric projects driven by youth is volunteerism, and that's all. So what do you think students can do to identify how to really capture the system as a whole and identify high leverage interventions that they can introduce? And secondly, how do they go about measuring the impact of their interventions or their projects?
So firstly, I think they have to ask themselves, are they solving today's problem or tomorrow's problem? So if you want to solve the problem of education within schools today, then your intervention might look very different. It might be very student-centered, it might be teacher-centered, it might be infrastructure-related, which is also great, which is also needed. But if you want to solve the problem from a much long-term perspective, then you might go into more policy-level interventions or intervening with, let's say, block education officers, working with the government, working with school principals, more systemic stakeholders. So one question just remains, that where do you want to intervene?
Yeah.
The other question then becomes, the first thing that I also did was to go to students, and I think that's how a lot of education projects start. But the reason why we shifted was it started feeling more self-serving, right? Because we knew that we wanted to change something in the system. And the question that we asked ourselves was, if I'm removed from this situation, then what has the delta been?
Yeah.
Right? And in the workshop kind of a setup, what the delta was for those few students. But what about if I'm working with 30 students at that point in time? I'm not working with like 400 other students in the school. So that was the second thing. And the third thing that we also looked at was we did not want to create anything parallel. So we did not want to just put in these extra elements or resources in the school, which actually make the school unsustainable. Because the moment you remove the resource, then the school doesn't have anything to rely
Yes,
on.
yes.
So the question was how do I build the capacity of the school? Through systems, through capacity building, things like that. So, and the way we arrived at it was one, obviously through the experiences that we'd had, but secondly, also through doing a lot of situation analysis, where we just said, if let's say I start with the problem statement of a child is not paying attention in the school,
Yeah.
there are 10 different reasons that could happen. They might be hungry. There might be a general malnutrition problem. It might be that this learning method doesn't work for the student. It might be that they didn't sleep well. So, but how it translates in general parlance is this child is naughty, they do not want to study.
Yeah.
So, one is how do we sit with the problem and really look at the multiple reasons and then draw essentially a tree diagram of sorts to say, okay, if the child was hungry, why was the child hungry? Right? Is it that there isn't food in the house?
Yeah.
Like, is it a poverty related challenge? Or is it something else that the child was unwell and hence they just came
a
to
root
school?
cause analysis of sorts.
Basically. And that then helped us realize that what were some of the common linkages that existed. Right? So when a lot of arrows were going back to this one single unit, then we knew that we have to do something with that unit. You still don't get the solution. You get where to intervene into the problem. So I think that's been also very helpful. And impact measurement is very hard, but it's so important because you can't keep just relying on stories, right? That I did XYZ, so a child learned better or a child was happy. Because if you're intervening with, again, let's say 40 students and you have stories of 2 students, that's also a data point that 38 students did not learn as much in the classroom. And the way we've approached the impact evaluation itself has gone through many iterations. But the format essentially remains the same, where we say we want to start with a baseline. And that baseline has to be dependent on the objectives of my program. So if I'm, let's say, saying that I want to improve the communication skills of a school principal, and as a result, I want that the school has better communication processes. Then the question is, how do I measure it? So communication I could measure as verbal communication, written communication. I could observe them while they're hosting a team meeting. And how are they interacting with their teachers, things like that. And then I can quantify that observation to say what was the tone of the principal. Was it friendly? Was it authoritarian? Was it strict? So when you go into another school and I go into another school, you're picking from the same drop-down options essentially. So designing a basic survey based on whatever goals you had and just do it as a baseline endline. Specific to what indicators you should measure, I think that's something that obviously differs program to program based on what you want to measure. How we also break it down is short term versus long term. So one is outputs that I can measure just directly in the school. So what are visible, tangible outcomes that I'll see in the school as a result of the program that's been run. And then what is something that I might see in 1 year? What is something that I might see in 3 years? So breaking that down, some of those answers you get after you've run the program. And that's okay. So we might have a set of, let's say, 20 indicators that we want to measure, but a lot of information we also get from these cases of unintended outcomes, which we then eventually realize we should make it a part of our indicators that we measure. And that's when you make it a participatory impact evaluation, right? So for me to say, I want to improve these 3 things in the school, but ultimately, let's say the school principal is saying it improved my voice, or I started feeling more confidence. Confidence was not something I was aiming for, but great that you felt that. But if another principal who anybody would say is more confident said that you put me in a spot where I had to learn. I was uncomfortable, and now I can speak in front of an audience. And this happened. So we asked her, "What do you mean you can speak in front of an audience? You speak in front of your students every single day."
Yeah.
She said, "I have never spoken to an audience of 100 adults from different backgrounds, right? And you made me do that, and it was very uncomfortable for me." So then we realized that, okay, this public speaking is something that all principals, irrespective of how confident they were into the program, is something new that they're learning. So could we measure that as well? So some of those factors we've discovered. But typically the methods that we use are a combination of focus group discussions, interviews, and observations in the school.
So ultimately, I'd say through and through the process that you use is very human-centered and very user-centric, and you always have to be someone with your eyes and ears open, observing how your participants are engaging with the program that you're creating. And like you said, not just the program design, which is a live document, as you said, even the way you impact and the data points that become important along the way is something that reveals itself as you go through the program and engage with the people who are participating in your program. Yes, so with that being said, I'd like to hear from you. What would your top pointers be for someone who's young and interested in exploring the space of social impact? What are certain things that you'd say they should keep in mind when they are looking to address a problem in their communities, a social problem? What is it that they should be mindful of?
I think this social space has also changed significantly over the years, where earlier, back in the day, maybe decades ago, the space was more about the intention to do good, which still exists, but now it's also a more problem solving kind of a way, that how do I solve social problems? And for any good problem solver, you have to sit with the problem to really solve it. So one thing is that we'll need to spend time with our users, and I call them users because I don't think they're beneficiaries receiving our programs, but rather people who we are working with and trying to serve. So one is to understand their pain points better, and sometimes the answer is not what they're telling you. Because when we used to go to principals earlier, they would tell us we need resources. There is a money crunch in the school. The solution to that simple solution would have been, okay, can I fundraise for the school and bring those resources in? But next year they'll say the same thing, right?
Yes.
So then you have to dig a level deeper to say, okay, if resources are continuously a problem for a school, what all can happen? And then what we built into the program was, can we teach a school principal how to network better? Can we teach a principal how to fundraise better? So that then you're solving tomorrow's problem also, not just today's problem. I think my message is just really give time towards understanding your user, and through both observations, interviews, direct questions, indirect observations, all kinds of things. And also don't assume that a solution is working. Irrespective of the amount of impact evaluation we do, some of the insights that we get into the program working or not working are conversations where we are just sitting across a school principal and having lunch together. And then in that conversation, they might say something which is so valuable in terms of what they want to learn, or how they hope to grow, or what challenge they are facing, or just feedback on the program itself. So I think that relationship building is very important in the kind of work that we do. So yes, I think just sitting with the problem is the first message, and understanding your user is the second one, and third is just valuing relationships and really investing in those relationships.
Yes, so I think these are three wonderful takeaways: that you sit with the problem, you understand the user that you're working for, and you value relationship building and really having a rapport with the users that you're not working for, but rather working with. Because we are also calling them users in a sense that, as we had mentioned earlier as well, it's not a top-down approach. It's an approach where we focus on a process of co-creation, where we want them to also participate and be a part of solution making. Because in the social space as well, it's been seen that it's when the communities come up with solutions themselves that they embrace it best, and these are the solutions that sustain as well. And I think a very important point that you mentioned is also that of but yes, again, a very tricky and a thin line between understanding what people's needs are on the basis of your conversations with them, but at your own level also, undertaking a root cause analysis, because like you said, a principal might say we need more money, but then the root cause might be something else. So your intent might be to do good, but in trying to address the symptom in the short run, you're actually adding to the problem in the long run and adding to the cycle. So I think this has been a very interesting conversation. Lastly, I'd like you to tell us what's next for the Unifly Collective. What is it that you have in mind?
So actually, that's also interesting because last year, if you would have asked me this question, I would have had a very big number of principles that we want to impact, things like that. But me and my co-founder, we sat together and we really asked ourselves, what brings us joy? Why did we join this space? And we realized things moving at a school level and really making a difference to that child's life is what makes a difference to us. And that's why we entered this space. So we've just set ourselves a target of saying that we want to intervene in 500 schools in the next 5 years, but a deep intervention in these schools where we can guarantee that this school will be an improved version of itself. It will be providing that ACE education that we talk about. And out of 500 of those schools, we want to work in 10% schools to build them up as model schools across the nation. So currently we are present in North and West India, and over the next 5 years we want to expand to Northeast, East and South of India as well, so that there are these models of education, under-resourced models but high-quality models of education that exist, where teachers, principals, etc. can also come to learn from. But we also understand that as social entrepreneurs in India, which has 250 million students, we need to come up with solutions that can also impact in a bigger, larger way. And for that, what we have decided to do is to partner with state governments and to take these best practices and these solutions that principals are developing from our 500 schools, take it to the government schools and help them implement already tried and tested solutions. So these 500 schools are going to be a wealth of knowledge in terms of how you can improve education from the bottom up. And then we plan to just scale it through government partnerships.
Thank you so much, Saumya. I wish you all the luck, because this is a mission that I think we are all equally a part of, because we're talking about a better future for the country. We live in a country where, while we have almost universal access to education, we do not have universal access to quality education. And I think we're all as invested, or should be as invested in this mission as you and your organization are, which is why I wish you all the luck. And we hope that there are ACE schools all across the country in the years to come. Yes, that was the episode, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you had some interesting and insightful takeaways from the episode. If you want to learn more about Saumya and the Unifly Collective, the socials and her details about the Unifly Collective are mentioned in the description box. If you have interesting stories to share, or if you would want to partner with the CDF to work on any impactful project that we are a part of, you can also reach out to us. Our details are also mentioned in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you again in the next episode.